All right, well, we shift our focus for a quick update on the most trending stories on social media this week. I do have Bukhule Putini, SABC digital news producer, with me. Bukhule, very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
How are you?
I'm awesome, thank you. What has been trending on social media this morning?
At top of our list, first of all, there has been a lot of news trending this week. And at the top of our list, we have the cabinet reshuffle. Now, President Jacob Zuma did announce a new cabinet reshuffle. Now, the reshuffle has affected 6 state departments and led to the axing of Blade Nzimande as the higher education minister. It also saw David Mahlobo being appointed as energy minister.
Yeah.
Now, according to the research and policy analyst unit of the SABC, this was the 11th time changes were made to the national executive since President Zuma came into office in May 2009.
Yeah.
Now, while 5 changes were made during his first term, in 2009 to 2014, now until today. Let's take a look at
the social media reactions.
Yeah,
I'm dying to find out what the people were saying on Twitter, because I know there was a lot that was said when that announcement about the cabinet reshuffle was actually made. A lot of people saying, well, this was just to out Blade. What were the sentiments on social media?
So Patelwa says Sunday newspapers are reporting that hashtag cabinet reshuffle was done by the Russians. At least it wasn't done by the Guptas this time around.
So there's a shift of power there, but it's still bad. Vusa Vunja there says Ramaphosa is asking for his firing through his comments on a cabinet reshuffle. Might be a good strategy though. Very interesting, Vusa. Let's look at more social media developments there.
And then lastly, Elephant Eyes, which is Sadi Cole, has a bit of humor there and says, comrades, I want to shave, but there is no blade in the cabinet. Hashtag cabinet reshuffle.
There is no blade in the cabinet. I mean, looking at the story now, this cabinet reshuffle happened towards the end of the week. How is it fared now? Is it still trending? Is it still getting many hits? And I mean, what are people saying now?
With the reports of the Sunday newspapers, it is still trending. People are still talking about this alleged Russian input within the cabinet reshuffle.
Where are they suggesting this Russian input is coming from now?
We will see how the day goes, but it is still trending. And to see how it will affect everyone and everything else.
All right. Well, I do have my guests on the main set now this morning. Gentlemen, thank you so much. You finally made it. Good morning to Sam and, of course, Ubudi. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for joining us, Mondli. Guys, let's look at this story. Blade Nzimande axed as, of course, the Higher Education and Training Minister. What were your reactions towards the social media side? Let's start with you, Mondli.
Well, it was expected. It was expected that it would happen the last time the cabinet reshuffle happened at the end of March, when Praveen Gordhan and SABC Jonas were axed. It was expected that there would be the other communists, members of the SA Communist Party would be axed, and it didn't happen then. But it was a matter of time. And people are saying that the fact that that President Zuma axed only Blade Nzimande served to sow confusion within the ranks of the Communist Party, because then what do? Do they all walk out en masse, or do they stand in solidarity with him, or do they stay inside cabinet and then cause division within the Communist Party? So it was a deft move by the president, because then the party has to act either out of principle or out of strategic solidarity.
But Sam, I mean, the sports minister is still from the SACP, is still there. I mean,
yeah, as Mondli says, it was just really to sow confusion within their ranks. And you saw the other move affecting the Communist Party is Buti Manamela being moved as deputy minister in the presidency, an important institution, and being moved out of that key. Just to shake up the Communist Party, but also to send a message that the Communist Party is not as strong as it thinks it is. So it's a middle finger to them.
Very interesting point you raised there, Sam. Let's look at the next big hashtag. What was it? Of course,
it was the SABC board.
We finally have a board.
So President Jacob Zuma in the week announced the new SABC board. Now, the appointment comes after Media Monitoring Africa said it would it would file an urgent court interdict to force Zuma to appoint a new SABC board. Now, on Monday, Zuma missed the deadline to oppose the advocacy group's application in the High Court. And the chairperson, amongst others, is Bongumusa Makatini, and the deputy is Phoebe Potchita Bubule, and then the others are Krish Naidu, Kanyisile Koyama, John Mattison, Matata Tsedu, Rachel Kalaidas, Michael Makrovitz, Victor Rambao, and Dikwanya Mahuba, and lastly Jack Palana. Sorry. Yeah.
All right. What were the reactions on social media? What is Reginald there saying?
He's saying, why does our government like recycling people? Now, why don't we see your young, fresh minds involved in leading these boards? Hashtag SABC board.
Let's look at more tweets coming in. Lehache says hashtag SABC board, hashtag cabinet reshuffle, hashtag SAA board. All in less than a week. Signals of something big on the horizon, I think. More tweets there? What is
lastly, Hloni is saying newly appointed SABC board will not serve its full term. Men and women of honor are going to resign amid political interference.
Sam, what do you make of these developments?
Look, it's difficult to say what's going to happen, but you can see some signs of what we've seen in the past and the intention to play the political game with the selection of the chair and the deputy, people with a very strong political links, and you could certainly link them to the Zuma camp in the ANC. I mean, the other problem is just the 7th minister for communications in 7 years. So it tells you, I mean, we have a history of instability, and we're not likely to get past that quickly.
Yeah. Look, it is. This probably is one of the best SABC boards we have seen in a very long time. So I think we have to give credit to that. What is going to be very interesting is the chairperson.
Absolutely.
And the deputy chairperson. The chairperson is someone who is linked to President Zuma, obviously through the foundation.
The foundation.
Yeah. But by all indications, he is a very strong individual. He's got all the credentials. So does he play a political game? Because of his links, I think that's going to be the issue. The deputy chair is somebody who has been nominated for a top 6 position in the ANC for the ANC conference in December. Does she stay on the board once she's elected to an NEC position?
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be another big challenge.
Many challenges coming up now, Mon. Bukule, let's quickly go through the last one, which
the
was,
last one is our Kwaito star, Bricks.
Disappointing.
Very disappointing.
Very disappointing.
He's a Kwaito star.
Yeah.
What are you saying, Mondli?
Now, see,
the sentence they handed down this week, of
Yeah.
course. What can you tell us about this case?
Now, this case, the sentence was handed down after 4 years. Briggs had raped his niece, who was 17 at the time, and the victim was suffering from, well, she had tried to commit suicide several times, and she is still battling with the terms of the rape.
Okay,
now, social media has been talking about this a lot and had memes as well.
That's Andy. They're saying, wow, just wow. Briggs just got 15 years and still that's not enough. This woman gets what?
And the next one, Vusta says, Jup Jup out of prison, Briggs into prison.
Prison reshuffle.
Prison reshuffle.
Everything is being reshuffled. Terrible tidings, says women are always victims in the hands of men. Does society care who is raising these brutal men and how? Hashtag Bolane. Gentlemen, a very quick comment from you. Sam, let's start with you.
Look, you saw there's been a few incidents of public figures being accused and charged with rape, and it's good that we're seeing
a conviction, an actual conviction.
It's very good, but also you see in social media now, people are talking quite often and quite strongly about so-called rape culture. It's good that you're seeing a lot of activism and awareness about it.
All right, a quick one, Mondli.
I think we expect too much just because somebody is prominent and the person is a star, that we expect him to behave differently from the rest of society. I think Briggs is what he is. But I think what I found disappointing this week was about the fact that people were comparing his sentence to Oscar's sentence.
Yeah.
I mean, it is rape. And that's what we should be concentrating on. He raped his niece and she's underage, and I think that's what should be the main thing.
Thank you for bringing that point up, Mondli. Bukule, it's our time is up here. Do give our viewers that URL where they can get all these news and more.
You can get our latest news on www.sabc.co.za/news, and on Twitter you can get us at SABC News Online. Our YouTube page is SABC Digital News.
All right, we're going to say goodbye to Bukule. Thank you so much for joining us, and of course I'm back with the news in a short moment. Your top news this hour. Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa says there is enough evidence for South Africa's investigative agencies to deal with allegations of state capture. Ramaphosa was addressing the Northwest Chamber of Business at the Northwest University.
Ramaphosa's concerns comes amid earlier announcements by the FBI and UK agencies that they will investigate the Gupta family and certain individuals linked to them.
Our own criminal investigation agencies, the Hawks, the NPA, must now get down to work and start investigation, because we don't want to be put to shame by what others will do when the problem originated here.
Meanwhile, the ANC Gauteng Executive Committee says it has endorsed Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa as its candidate to party president. 10 other names have also been considered for national office bearer positions, including Lindiwe Sisulu and Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma.
At the last conference, the conference endorsed Cyril Ramaphosa as the Deputy President of the ANC. Unless there is a compelling reason why he is not capable of leading, we said to our branches that consider him as a candidate.
ANC presidential hopeful Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma called for a peaceful elective Congress in December. She said members should campaign for unity and refrain from name-calling and bad-mouthing others. This as the race gains momentum and tension rises within the party. Dlamini-Zuma says there will never be unity if they look down upon each other. She says even if someone insults you as a disciplined cadre, you shouldn't retaliate. Dlamini-Zuma urged women to flood the branch general meetings that are currently underway in the Free State to ensure they nominate their preferred candidates ahead of the elective Congress. Dlamini-Zuma says free education is a priority, but she urged young people to behave responsibly.
NC struggle veteran Mac Maharaj says the NC should keep its house in order, own up to its mistakes and correct them if it wants to remain in power. Maharaj was addressing the memorial lecture of the late NC President Oliver Tambo in Durban.
Addressing his first public gathering after being away from the public eye for a few years, Maharaj says the ruling party needed to conduct a self-introspection. He also called on the ANC to iron out differences with its alliance partners. His call comes as relations within the alliance are at an all-time low, and as some within the SACP have suggested that the communists contest the elections independently.
I am saying that the ANC will either ship up and take shape and deliver the goods, or it will fail. Its future rests on its membership, on its branches, not just on its leadership.
Maharaj said recent reports and allegations made on state capture point to a serious problem.
The evidence that has appeared in the public space is deeply worrying. And we have to grapple with that evidence. We have to recognize that the evidence is pointing to serious issues. And the issue then is how to deal with it.
The ANC stalwarts would not comment on the succession debate, but says all candidates should have policies that favor the poor. Lungisi Khumalo, SABC News, Durban.
Meanwhile, ANC veteran and policymaker Joel Netshitenze has pleaded with ANC branch members to vote for corrupt-free leaders during the upcoming national conference in December. He says this could help bring back the confidence that South Africans have lost due to corruption and state capture. Nechitenze was also delivering the Oliver Tambo Memorial Lecture out in Port Elizabeth.
Nechitenze took a swipe on the ruling party's policy of radical economic transformation, saying it is only directed at the Gupta family, not the poorest.
We should take our own education as cadres of the ANC very, very seriously. Amongst others, because the ANC has come to the realization we are leading a modern society in a modern and modernizing world. And therefore, for us to be able to exercise that leadership, we need not only to understand politics, but also have academic qualifications that will help us appreciate the various dynamics in the global environment.
Nechitenze alleges brown bags with money to buy delegates to vote in their favor have become a norm in the ruling party.
And I do hope that as you go through processes of electing your delegates, you will be as strategic and as vigilant as possible.
Nechitenze believes the ruling party can still cleanse itself from corruption and state capture if branch delegates vote with their conscience and wisdom. Zolani Moya, SABC News, Port Elizabeth.
All right, let's look at your derby news now. The Soweto derby ended in a goalless stalemate after Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates had slugged it out at the FNB Stadium.
Following a morale-boosting 2-1 win over Sundowns in midweek, Kaizer Chiefs hosted arch-rival Orlando Pirates in the league encounter on Saturday. The contest got off to a bright start, both teams looking to take the game to each other early on. However, lack of rhythm and composure in the final third resulted in limited goal-scoring opportunities. Despite being on the back foot for much part of the opening exchanges, the Chiefs nearly took the lead 30 minutes into the contest, only for Siyabonga Ngezana to be denied by the upright. Thabo Kalinge, who forced a brilliant save from Itumele Nkune just after kickoff, was once again in the thick of things, threatening to break the deadlock with another attempt from outside the box. With 15 minutes to go, Pirates thought they have finally broken the deadlock. However, Bernard Morrison was judged to have handled the ball and a subsequent yellow card followed. Despite both the teams' best attempts to take the lead before the referee's final whistle, the contest ended in a stalemate. Joseph Mohali, SABC News.
All right, and that's a look at your headline news this hour. Coming up after the break, we'll take a look at how South Africa and, of course, the media fraternity celebrated or commemorated Black Wednesday this afternoon. And, of course, I'm going to formally introduce my guest. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning to you.
All right, we're back shortly after this.
Here we are witnessing the beginning of the end of the apartheid system.
If you did a paternity test on our constitution, whose DNA would come up? Not Nelson Mandela, not F.W. de Klerk, Oliver Tambo.
Show me a greater power on the whole continent of Africa. Show me a greater power anywhere.
6th of June 1918 was the establishment of our movement to maintain that.
We need to do something about the educational upliftment of the Afrikaner, and we also need to do something about the economic upliftment of the Afrikaner. And that was the two main goals at that stage in 1918.
The Brotherhood never was a cultural organization. It was a state-capturing organization. It is, in fact...
I like that term.
It has captured the financial systems. It has captured the parastatals. It has captured cultural organizations.
For all your constitutional and legal matters, tune into Rights and Recourse on Sundays between 2 and 3 Central African Time.
Welcome back. Well, this week marked the 40th anniversary of the day the erstwhile apartheid government unleashed its brutality on the media fraternity, banning and closing down various progressive publications, detaining scores of political activists and banning several anti-apartheid organizations, and that day became to be known as Black Wednesday. It was government's way of silencing critical media voices that were involved in the fight against apartheid and exposing the darker side of the oppressive regime. Let's take a look at this insert.
40 years on, and the resilience of these veteran journalists built the foundation for media freedom. October 19th marks a milestone in South Africa.
This was the day when the apartheid regime was trying to silence the voices of dissent and kill all the organizations that were waging struggles for freedom.
It seems, however, that the struggle continues in post-apartheid journalism.
Today it's drip, drip, drip for journalists. We are slowly getting to the level of fear that we saw before the demise of the National Party and apartheid. By the time we get the law to protect us, we'd have had to spend time in jail.
And a drop for South Africa on the media freedom standings in the world.
It's not surprising that in spite of our excellent laws and courts, South Africa is not among the top in the world press freedom indices. Freedom House says we are partly free. Reporters Without Borders put us as 31st out of 180 countries.
Some struggle journalists were acknowledged and awarded certificates for their outstanding contribution to the field of journalism. Among them, veteran lensman Sam Nzima, who snapped the iconic 1976 Hector Peterson picture.
All right, allow me now to formally introduce my guests. Everything is so crazy today. We understand you guys were stuck in a roadblock, but thankfully you're all here now. Of course, I have with me City Press editor, Mr. Mondli Makanya, and of course, deputy chairperson of Sun Air, Mr. Sam Kokeli. Gentlemen, what a pleasure.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, let's get on to it. I mean, 40 years on, let's talk about the challenges that our media fraternity still faces. Let's start with you, Sam.
Look, just before we get to that, just to disown the one title I don't have. I'm responsible for media freedom in SANEF.
All right.
I chair the subcommittee. I mean, we've seen the clip just before us talking about this now. I mean, you've seen the veterans are talking about the problems that they experience in the Matata. Tsedu, Joe, Klolwe. These are very, very good journalists who experience harassment and detainment by the apartheid government back then. And they're talking now and warning us about some of the problems that we are experiencing in the current dispensation. But generally, South Africa is a free country for media to operate as journalists. I personally enjoy a lot of freedom provided by the legislative framework, which is a very beautiful thing. But there are challenges at the same time. They come from the commercial issues facing the media industry, also issues with regards to field reporting, where the terrain is getting increasingly hostile, and journalists they get beaten up and they get harassed. And there are bodies like a BLF who want to harass journalists at every opportunity. So there are those kind of threats, but generally we are a free sector.
Is this your sentiment?
Yeah, I think we have a very, very free environment, and I think that that's one of the great credits that we should give ourselves, all of us, as a South African society, that we have created an environment for freedom of speech, not just for journalists, but for the whole society. You can phone into every radio station and say what you like about the people who run the country, about the about the authorities, whatever. There is no chance of you going to jail for saying what you want to say. But I don't think that we owe it to anyone. I mean, I think that South Africans have created that environment for themselves. They own their freedom, and I think that's very important. In as much as the governing party has at times tried to encroach on media freedom spaces, the government has tried to encroach on the space for freedom of expression. South Africans have always said, no, this is our freedom, and we own it, and the media has fought back, and I think that's it's something that we should treasure.
But is that the case? I hear you, gentlemen, we're saying we have this media freedom, but I mean, when it comes to cases like your high-profile individuals, if you're investigating them, we've had a lot of journalists saying that they've received death threats because they're investigating this individual, and we've heard people going as far as court to go and try and have their stories not published. Is that what you're calling free, Sam?
Yeah, there are examples. I mean, there's just one anecdote. And there is one of Modi's colleagues, and Tsipo Masondo, received death threats for his very good kind of stories that he's been doing on the water affairs department. And so in Sunday Times, Zilikaziwa Africa as well needed to have bodyguards. And there are a number of editors in South Africa who live and they walk around with bodyguards. And so there are problems. But you can't make a general statement from that saying that because some people do not want their stories out there in the public, and then they intimidate journalists, and therefore the media industry is not free. We are generally
how do
free,
we deal
but
with
there are
that
threats.
There are threats. How do we deal with such threats then, Sam?
I mean, one of the basic things, I mean, the journalists have to keep doing what they're doing, and we hope that their companies will provide them with the protection that they need. But from time to time, we talk to the police minister about the kind of problems that we're talking about now, and he has helped in the past with some examples. But we also need the public to be aware that this is their right. The right to the right of the media is not just about us as a professional journalists. It's about the public's right to know.
Absolutely. Monty, what do you think?
I expect it to happen. We speak truth to power. Trump hates the media, and uses every opportunity.
I don't think the media
to
likes Trump much.
And it's supposed to be one of the freest countries in the world.
Yeah.
Just the other day, a journalist was blown up in a car bomb in Malta. So we do what we do, and there will be dangers, there will be threats, but we continue to do what we do because we serve a role in society. What's important is that the legislative framework must remain intact, the institutional framework must remain intact, and it must provide the protection for journalists, but not just for journalists, but for the rest of society to be able to speak freely. And that doesn't come just because someone is doing you a favor. Whether it's the ANC, the DA, the EFF, or the ACDP that's in power, we must always expect that people in power will hate what we do. Let's not live under any illusions that people in power will somehow think that we'll be nice to each other. No, there will always be
that hostility attention, so to speak.
So like it's a question of us as a society, not just as media, as a society protecting our free space.
Let me ask you this then, gentlemen. With all that said, do you think Black Wednesday garnered enough support or coverage through the media this Wednesday, and is it still relevant in this day and time, Sam?
Look, Black Wednesday is an important event, but you don't want to reduce the struggle for media freedom to just one hardy annual that we have in October. What you want is us to see South Africans taking seriously their democracy and seeing freedom of expression being a key part of that. And it's a right that they need to practice and enjoy every single day. You want that and go filtering through society, not just the middle classes who get to buy newspapers and consume different other products of the media, but you want the ordinary South African out there to enjoy their right to know, and so that they can hold their own government, and other people could be in commerce and out there in society, people who wield the power, that they could be held accountable.
Let's talk about how social media now also comes into this fore, where we're seeing a lot of less original investigative pieces to where it's just revised or refined pieces that were taken online. How is that killing our journalism? Are we a lazy media fraternity in 2017?
I think mainstream media, we do our investigations, we do our reporting.
But why do all the stories look the same?
They do not look the same. No.
Maybe with an exception of a word or two that was tweaked.
No. I think the South African media is very diverse. I mean, like you have when you wake up in the morning in Johannesburg, you've got your Daily Sun.
Multiple newspapers,
and exactly. I mean, like, and you've got your financial media with like
covering more or less the same stories.
Well, it's the same stories happen every day.
Yeah.
But we break different stories. I mean, like if you look at today's
I like
papers.
how you're defending this one.
No. I think I know I live in a free society. I will always live in a free society, and there's diversity in our media. Regardless of what anybody says. The fact that the Guptas dominate the media is because the Guptas are
the biggest newsmakers.
Yeah, no, exactly. The fact that Orlando Pirates nearly beat Chiefs yesterday is fact. I mean, like, so.
No, it's not news.
But I just want to say, on social media, we live in the 21st century. There will be social media. There's a freedom to put anything out there now. I mean, we can't deny that. But I think what's important is for the mainstream media to always be able to do the researched stories, to be able to do the investigative stories, and to be able to project the stories that set the agenda. The noise is great. I think it's just fantastic that it gets society to talk a lot more, and it enhances our ability to talk to each other. So I'm not complaining about social media.
A quick one from you, Sam. What do you think about?
Yeah, it's a good thing. I mean, that people can publish, but it's also a problem that everybody is their own reporter, their own editor. I mean, so not everybody has the skills to verify information that they get, and people just peddle information that often is not correct.
All right, well, let's take a quick ad break, and after that we're very pleased to be joined by ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte, who's joining us in studio to talk about Oliver Tambo's legacy and of course the upcoming centenary celebration plans that the ANC has for the late struggle icon. We're back with that shortly after this.
With the stories of abuse from the other 8, but they haven't been ready to pursue any angles. They've offered their support. They've offered the comfort to the 8, and it's been an amazing journey.
It feels like your heart actually literally sunk in your shoes.
It wasn't a long encounter. I think at the time I froze.
The way the criminal justice system deals with sexual violence is problematic. And I don't know, unless there's a fundamental change in many things, the way prosecutors deal with the victim in the matter.
For all investigative insights, stay tuned to Special Assignment every Saturday at 17:30.
A lot of us rely on tech to survive, and Africa is already a mobile-first continent.
We built mobile technology that connects motorcycle taxis to commuters and businesses in real time.
My phone was the most important thing.
Africans are using technology to innovate. On Network, we have African technology and social media news. Even robots have heard about us.
Hello, watch Network on SABC.
For African technology and social media news, join Ms. Phumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 9 p.m.
Welcome back to Media Monitor. The OR Tambo centenary celebrations kick off tomorrow. That's Monday, the 23rd of October, under the theme Life and the Legacy of OR Tambo. We celebrate the legacy of the struggle icon, the role that he played towards the country's liberation, and of course his values. Tambo, who led the ANC in exile for over 2 decades, died in April of 1993 after suffering complications from a stroke. He would have turned 100 years old tomorrow. And early this week, President Jacob Zuma unveiled a statue of the late former ANC leader, OR Tambo, at the International Airport east of Johannesburg. And for this discussion, we're very pleased to welcome, as I've said before, Deputy Secretary General, ANC Deputy Secretary General Jesse Duarte. Jesse, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Wow. Take us through the plans that are in line for the centenary celebrations this week.
Firstly, let me just say that we started in January already. This year.
Yes, it's been declared as the year of OR Tambo.
That's right. And what we've done is we've had over 62 lectures that have taken place throughout the country in various regions of the country. I think the most important one of those have been ones that were inspired at a very grassroots level by branches unnoticed by the media, unfortunately. And those produce the best kind of debates about values, about where the ANC should be taking itself to, based on the values of Comrade Oliver Tambo. So this week sort of culminates in the processes that have been going on throughout the year. What we've decided to do is we will be going to Lobatsi, which is where the ANC held its very first external conference, assisted by Fish Ketsing, who was an underground activist of the ANC until he was deported. So we'll be going there. Numbers of us are going to Lobatsi on the 27th. We'll be there to celebrate OR's life as an internationalist. One of the areas of the debates, as we've analyzed them, that happened in the country is that we didn't spend a great deal of time with the work Comrade OR did in mobilizing the international community to support the South African struggle against apartheid. And it was a bit more than a struggle for votes, I must tell you that. And I think often people overlook that. They think we just fought to have, to make an X. We actually fought for much, much more than that. And he was one of the proponents of economic emancipation as well as the emancipation of women. And he makes many remarks about that in his books and in his statements. And what has been very rich about this year is that people have picked those up and have begun to analyze how long ago the concept of needing to restructure the economy of our country has been a debating point. And suddenly it became a slogan, and it looks like it's very new. So one of the issues would then be in Lobatsi. We will celebrate OR's legacy there with friends and comrades from Botswana, and then move on to Gaborone, where there will be a sod turning for a memorial that will be dedicated to him. When we come back after Lobatsi, because we don't want to compete with the government's plan, which is happening at Lukanji, we will come back and have some celebrations that take place both at Ekurhuleni, and we'll continue with the lectures until December. They've been enormously valuable to young people. I myself was really honored to speak to a group of students in Midrand, and there were about 380-90 people in the room, and what interested me more than being in that room was the kind of things they were saying about themselves as being South Africans, the future belonging to them, a demand for unity within the ANC, and a demand for implementation of economic programs that will in fact change the structure of our economy.
Jesse, but a lot of people are saying, I mean, what is the significance of this centenary? Do some of, I think when we're talking about media, going back to your earlier point, we often hear about what a moral compass of a leader that OR was. And of course, which often leads or draws comparison to some current leaders. Do you think the ANC still harbors leaders with the same attributes that the ethical leader that Ubaba OR Tambo was?
You know, it would be incorrect to say that every ANC leader is unethical. It's like saying every journalist is unethical. And I would never do that, nor would anyone else. I think that each generation develops its own set of leaders that are needed for that time. Comrade OR was the ultimate unifier of the ANC against the apartheid regime. His strength was incomparable to anyone else's. He led us through the worst times of our struggle. He took us through reaching out to the international community to support an armed struggle. A very difficult thing to do. And he made friends in Russia and China and in the Eastern countries and the social democrats in the Nordic countries, but not in the West. UK, France and the USA didn't really support the ANC struggle for liberation in the same way that that other countries did. And I think that OR had the incredible ability to still maintain friendships, even with people who didn't support us at all, just so that you keep the struggle alive in the minds of people on the ground. So that was his legacy: unity, unity, but consciousness and serious ability to put content on the table.
Absolutely.
And putting content on the table meant putting the hard issues before the ANC. Post Morogoro, his statement coming out of a very, very tough conference was close ranks. The order to our MK soldiers, our cadres on the ground, our friends in the international community is that we close ranks. And we're at that point again, where we simply have to reach out to everyone in this country, but make sure that the policies of the ANC are not distorted and changed by people simply because they won't accept development and change. And Comrade OR, I must say, I very fortunately met him thrice in my life.
Wow.
Once in London, once in Lusaka, once in Sweden, and of course when he came home. And each time, 2 minutes of conversation with this incredible man was a whole lesson in how to stay firm.
Wow. Mama Jesu, you talk about Oliver Tambo being that unifier. I mean, let's talk about this. Talk to us about maybe some current effective measures that are being taken by the party to unify itself ahead of the very, very crucial elective conference in December.
Obviously, this is a very challenging period. People have personal ambitions, and sometimes it's very difficult to mitigate personal ambition with what is important for the country and for the ANC. The first thing we're saying to people is that we need to have a much stronger ANC than the ANC we have now. Because if the ANC weakens any further, the likelihood of South Africa drifting into chaos is real. And we know that. We feel it, we know it, and we're not arrogant about it. We see it where there are coalitions. It's just not working out. And sometimes ANC people are responsible for that, and sometimes the opposition is. But the real issue now is a discussion within the ANC about whether it is at all possible to have a single list of leaders of high quality, of good values, of a caliber that will take us into the next 20 years, which undoubtedly are going to be the more difficult period in this country. As you try to change a very concentrated economy, you are expecting fight back. You are expecting people to take the ruling party.
People don't like accepting change sometimes.
And the physical manifestation of this is that Gauteng is now almost a building site, and yet people say we're in a recession, and buildings are going up all over the place, as it did in Cape Town, just after the DA won power there, which tells you a very particular story, that South Africa's capital will put money where they rule. And so this is really a contest of development-orientated policies, as opposed to people who still see our country as a place to make money and then leave. So we believe that the conversation is not a comfortable one. That we have, but it's a necessary one. And whoever leads the ANC after December has to accept one thing very firmly, that person will be the leader of every ANC member, including ANC members who did not perhaps support them. One of the things that has been awkward for the ANC is this American-style election campaign that has been run. Many of us feel extremely uncomfortable with the behavior of some of the candidates, and we are speaking out about that in-house, and that's where it's going to end on that matter.
All right, Jesse, I wouldn't be doing due diligence. I know they're going to kill me because we're out of time, but I have to just get your quick reaction on the recent developments, of course, that is being the reshuffle and of course the NPA deadline. Just quick 2 comments there.
Well, I think the NPA needs to move. Nobody's asking it not to move. I think that we have a discourse with the media which is awkward and difficult. The media of course, runs the country in its own way, and doesn't accept that there are actually people who have jobs to do and are doing their jobs very firmly and perhaps correctly without taking shortcuts. On the reshuffle, honestly speaking, it was the president's prerogative to do so. He did come to the officials. He did say, I'm making these changes, and he did ask opinions. Opinions were given. There was a discussion in that room. People demurred, others had different views, but it is his prerogative. And he went ahead and he made a reshuffle. And from where I'm sitting, it didn't make a great big dent in the rand, which is normally what people expect to happen, isn't it? And so we move on.
All right, Jesse, thank you so much for joining us. That is the ANC Deputy Secretary General Umau Jesse Duarte talking to us about, of course, the centenary celebrations to commemorate the late struggle icon with Oliver Tambo. When Media Monitor returns, we take a look at, of course, more news that have been making headlines across the country. Stay with us.
Hello and a warm welcome to PM News, and we're broadcasting live from Johannesburg.
4 decades later, the family is still seeking closure.
We need the truth, and the truth must be told.
Children often go undiagnosed because they are hidden away. About 1 million people in South Africa live with autism.
Creative recycling at play.
Mosaic has been around forever. I just had to find a new, fresh way to put and a new spin to put on it. So I decided, why not recycled cans?
Stay tuned to PM News for all your news updates every Saturday and Sunday from 1500 hours.
The Pan-African Parliament as a legislative body could go a long way in continuing to promote women's rights in all African member states.
Moon will be elected president. A decisive win by him will provide much needed stability in South Korea.
The Deputy President and the SADC Oversight Committee have been mandated to convene a multi-stakeholder national dialogue before elections.
5 teams are trapped in the relegation mud. These include Bloemfontein Celtic, 12th on the log, followed by Chipa United, Free State Stars and Baroka, who are second from the bottom, as well as Highlands Park, who have won only 4 matches.
We're on point with breaking stories, detailed economy and sport. Tune into Midday Report every Monday to Friday from 12 p.m.
All right, and for this week's Africa Update, we're very pleased to welcome SABC Channel Africa journalist and an analyst on African affairs, Babu Izakomo, who will be shedding more light on the developments in Kenya leading to the election rerun and, of course, the aftermath of a bombing that saw the killing of 358 people in the capital, Mogadishu. Babu Izak, a very good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Good morning to you and the listeners too.
Look, let's talk about, of course, Kenya. Let's start with Kenya. What are the possibilities of these elections being free and fair? Chibukati has already says that he doesn't even think that that is going to be possible.
Well, I mean to say that it just shows where the future lines are and what's happening in Kenya. Is this that the Chibukati, of course, is the chairperson of the Independent Electoral and Borders Commission. Yeah. And you find that that board, that commission, is divided. Yeah, there is a lady who has actually sort of resigned, Akombe. She's in the States, and she actually cited fear of her life.
Political interference, yeah.
Exactly. So, and she said that there's no way under the present circumstances that the elections could be fair, free, and credible. Yeah? Those are the terms that she used.
Yeah.
So you find that basically the Kenyan situation is really dire. Politically, it's divided. Yeah, and it's divided on regional lines, and you find that also that division has gone into the Electoral Commission. But you should remember that before the elections, there was a worker of the election commissioner who was actually kidnapped, tortured, and killed. Now, the mere fact that he was tortured, it seems that people, he was in charge of the ICT.
Yeah.
People wanted to get hold of passwords and codes and things like that. So you find that the credibility of the Electoral Commission, it has been tainted, really.
Gentlemen, let's talk about this. I mean, I was reading somewhere that this poses a serious threat. The political violence could possibly lead to ethnic violence that we saw in Kenya due to the country's history. Mondli, what do you think about this? Do you think that we're really going to see these elections go ahead?
Well, I think that there has to be a maturity that comes in Kenya at this particular point, because 2007-2008 can happen again. I think more than any other democracy in Africa, Kenya has very strong ethnic cleavages.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that easily spills over into violence. But I think this is where the AU comes in. This is where now you have to come in as whether it's the East African community or the AU to say, in order to preserve the most stable anchor in that region and on the continent, that actually perhaps a breather is necessary, that elections should not happen now. Clearly, the last result was a very close one. And so any result that comes from here now, if we go ahead, it will be heavily contested. So I think that a postponement is probably the best way forward.
Sam, what do you think? Do you think a postponement is going to aid the current issues or disputes that are currently happening in Kenya? Because we see that main opposition leader Raila Odinga does not want to budge unless 9 of his 11 demands are met.
To be a very difficult environment to go to the polls like that. You saw immediately after the disputed election, I mean, there were people who were harassed, there were gangs running around and harassing people in their own homes. So it tells you that there is a problem. But sadly, I mean, what as Mondi talks about the need for the AU to get involved, what we've seen in the past decade or so is that the AU forgetting about the need to make democracy quite an important part, and to make sure that democratic culture is something that is embraced by all the states in Africa.
All right, Isaac, let's move on now to the tragedy that happened in Mogadishu. Do you think the government has enough resources to deal with the situation at hand there? Talk to us about that.
Well, I mean to say that it's just one of the many crises. I mean, Somalia is a country that is going from one crisis to another crisis. So to ask whether the government has got resources, is the same crisis that's taking place. In fact, there's a bigger crisis which is taking place now. That is the drought that's taking place. The drought is taking place all over the country. In fact, over the whole region. And then the government and the past government, they don't seem to be doing much there. And unfortunately, we get reports that the people who are mostly affected by the drought are people in the south. And this, when you talk of people in the south, the majority of those people in the south, they are black, Bantu, Somalis, who are highly discriminated. In fact, among the other Somalis, they are referred to as Adon. Adon is a Somali word for slave. And these people have been marginalized from the time of independence. I mean, it's not me who's saying so. Even the President Farmajo, when he was being inaugurated, he actually mentioned about the atrocities and also the marginalization of the farming people. But then the thing is this, that these people, they're in they're in internal displaced camps, and aid that is supposed to go to them does not get to them. It ends up in the market. So basically, even now, I heard reports yesterday from Bantu Somalis in Mogadishu. They're saying that there are people who are maimed and hurt have been actually sent overseas to Turkey, to Qatar. But among those people, there's not even one African Somali. They're left behind. So basically, that's the dire situation that's coming out of
This is what I wanted to know. But Isaac, don't you think, of course, we know that Al-Shabaab has been blamed for this attack, and of course they have not commented on that. Couldn't you say these were counterattacks against Trump's extra military operation there against, of course, the group in that region?
Well, Al-Shabaab has refused. Trump's thing is not there, but again, people should understand the politics of Somalia, and more so what has taken place in the last fortnight. Yeah, we'll go back to what happened about a month or 2 months ago when Turkey announced they signed a treaty with the present government that they're going to set up a military base to train 10,000 Somali troops. Yeah, but the report says that to train 15,000, but they're going to have a Turkish military presence. That base has been built to bring in Turkish soldiers. Now you find that Somali, they are allied to Turkey and Qatar, and there's this big Middle Eastern fissure between Saudi Arabia and the Emirates. But now, to cut the story short, on the 11th on Wednesday, 11th of October, the head of the different regions met, and then they elected a head. That's something like a new government. 2 days after that, the Minister of Defense resigned, and the head of the army resigned. The day after that, we have the big blow-up. So now that explains what's happening.
Unfortunately, we are really out of time. Thanks to my director, he's given me 5 extra minutes. Thank you, Johan. That is unfortunately where we leave it for this morning's show. That was, of course, Isaac Komo, SABC journalist, and of course an expert in African affairs, and he was unpacking along with the rest of my team here the latest developments in your continental news. I've got your global news on top of the hour.